Thank you, everyone, for attending. I'm really excited to bring this information to you. I'm also very excited for you because the decision to try to start a business, I feel, is one of the hardest decisions to make. And so, if you've already made that decision and you've already, started, whether that's, you filed for your business entity or you found your first customer, or if you haven't done any of those yet, and you haven't quite started, but you're on this webinar, congratulations, because this is a nerve-wracking process, and that decision is difficult to make, but that's what we're here to help you for. So make sure you take advantage of the score.org resources and sign up to be mentored, by a SCORE mentor. It's really going to help you to start and grow your business. So today we're talking about I'm going to share my screen here. We're talking about the Lean Business Model Canvas. So this is, there's a couple of tools that you can use as the building blocks of a solid foundation for the start of your business. Lean Business Model Canvas is one of them. A lot of the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs use this instead of a business model to kind of kickstart their business concept and think through it deeply so that they can figure out if they have a concept that's feasible for them. But then the other building block that to me goes hand in hand with this is the business plan. And the difference between a business model canvas and a business plan is that a business model canvas is a quick overview. It's meant to be a less detailed summary than a business plan, meant to get you started a little bit quicker. And it's really like for yourself and any business partners you might have. You're not going to use a business model canvas to go get a loan from a bank or to bring on investors. Those folks are going to want to see the business plan, because the business plan is it's a more specific, detailed document. And a couple of the key differentiators is that in the business plan, you're going to have financial projections, and you're also going to have your marketing plan. Now, business model canvas kind of shortcuts that, because a lot of entrepreneurs get kind of stuck with the business plan. It feels overwhelming to them. And they're not really sure how to fill it all out. So enter the business model canvas, in particular, the Lean Business Model Canvas, which we're talking about today. Slightly different than the original business model canvas. So this is going to help you to really think through your business and think deeply about the different puzzle pieces that you're going to have to put together. And then once you think through each of these different puzzle pieces, it will likely bring to light some aspects of the business that maybe you haven't thought about yet. Force you to think about those things, how you're going to execute them, and what are the resources that are going to be required in order to execute these things. And by the time you're done with this, I think you're going to have a really confident feeling that your business model is feasible, and or it's possible that you do go through all these pieces and think deeply about them and discover, well, maybe it's not feasible, or maybe it's not feasible right now, or maybe it's not feasible with the resources I have, right? Either way, it's going to give you a great step in the right direction for how to move forward. So what you're seeing on the screen here is the different sections or the different puzzle pieces of the Lean Business Model Canvas. And it's a good idea to draw this out. Like today's presentation is a webinar. It's just an overview. is not a workshop, so it's not meant for you to try to fill this out today during this presentation, but it's a great idea to draw this out. Gosh, when my wife and I did our first business model canvas, like 17 years ago, we got a big folding, the trifold poster board, and we drew it out on there, and then we used sticky notes in each of the sections to fill those out. So you can do that, or you can create it on the computer like I did here, and then fill in each section. And by doing that, instead of kind of putting it down on a piece of paper and writing in pen or pencil, like that doesn't give you the ability to change things, to move information. If you use the sticky note example, or if you do it on your computer, now you can change some of the information, because you're probably going to either through the course of developing it, or as you move on with your business and you update this. So that's another point that I want to make, that the business model canvas isn't just for starting your business. You can also use this if you have been in business for a while, and let's say you want to introduce a new product or a new service. You can develop a business model canvas specifically aimed at that new product or new service. Or if you want to purchase a business, you want to acquire a business, you can use this for that purpose as well, to help you really think deeply, think through whether or not that's a good product, a good service, a good business to acquire. And if you do go forward with it, what is that all going to look like? How does it fit in with your existing business? So you can fill this out in any order you want. I kind of fill it out in the order that makes logical sense to me. So that's how we'll go through it today. But again, you can fill it out however you want. And once you get used to filling these out, you could definitely pick, the first section can be whatever you want it to be, because you'll have a full understanding of how to fill it all out. Okay, so every business exists to solve a problem, or it should at any rate, right? So in this section, that's all you're doing, is you're just putting down what the problem is that your product or service solves. Now, I want to encourage you to be somewhat detailed here. The example that I give is, if you want to start a restaurant, right? It's not enough detail for you to say the problem I'm solving is to stop people from being hungry, right? You're going to want to put a little more detail than that in there. So be a little more specific about the problem it is that you're solving. And then customer segments really talks about who you're solving that problem for, right? So we start with a problem. Here's the problem. And here's the people who are seeking or who are having the problem. And your customer segments in marketing, we call this buyer personas. And really the intent here is for you to think deeply about who it is who's having the problem that you want to solve, and really try to get fairly specific here about who those people are. Now, technically, you'd be going into really great detail about your buyer personas in the marketing plan, in your business plan. But it's not going to hurt you to do it here as well, especially if this is where you're starting out in order to kind of test your concept or put all the pieces together. So some of the information you want to think about regarding the people who are having the problem that you're having are demographics, first of all, which is kind of like stats, right? Age, gender, do they live in the city or not? What's their household income? Those kinds of things. But then also try to think about psychographics as well. Psychographics is basically, how people think. For example, what's the worldview of your perfect customer? Are they frugal? Are they spendthrifty? What's their risk tolerance? Are they an early adopter if you have a product that's just completely new to the market? Are they family first? Are they self-centered? You can come up with a whole bunch of psychographics to think about who your primary buyers are. So I would suggest just no more than 3 buyer personas here. Start with the buyer persona who you think is the perfect customer, and the person who's experiencing the most pain from the problem that you solve. Okay, and then, we've talked about, okay, you solve a problem. Now you know who has the problem. So what is your solution to the problem? And again, try to get fairly detailed. If you have a restaurant that you want to start, the solution isn't we will have food, right? The solution should be a little bit deeper than that. At this point, you should have a good idea of who your primary buyer is, and you want to talk about your solution in a way that fits that person perfectly. And then after this next section, then I'll pause for questions. So now we've gone over what's the problem, who's having the problem, what is your solution. In the next section now, you want to detail why the buyers are going to choose your solution over the competitors. This is what's called your value proposition, the value that you bring to your buyers. And your value is likely unique, right? There's something about you as a person, or the way you're going to run your business, or the way you're going to hire people, that is unique, and that's going to make the difference for your perfect customer. And that's why they're going to show up to purchase your product or your service. So this is the section where you want to think about that. A good reference for you is there's a guy named Simon Sinek, and he's, makes millions of dollars talking to the top executives at all the biggest companies, Apple and Microsoft and all them. And he has a great talk called The Golden Circle. It's a TED Talk. So if you just look up on YouTube, Simon Sinek's Golden Circle TED Talk, you'll find it. I think it's maybe a 15-minute video, something like that. And he talks about the why. So that's going to really give you a solid understanding of why the why is important. And it's important for you to understand your why. Why are you in business? Why do you want to serve people? And why do you want to solve this problem that they're having? It's also important for you to understand what the buyer's why is. Why are they going to buy your service over somebody else's? So I'll pause right there. And are there any questions, Ed, that I can answer?
Yeah, and before we get to the questions, just one comment on that value proposition, Paul. My experience has been I've used Lean Canvas as a tool with my clients for years, and that is probably the most difficult square in the Lean Canvas to fill out. That really takes a lot of thinking to really say what product or what service and how that differentiates you from the competition. And a lot of people do a general versus, thinking through a specific part of it, but it is a key part of the, Lean Canvas business model. So just thought
I agree. And, that's what makes the buyer persona or the customer segment so important. Really having a really solid understanding and a deep understanding of what those demographics and psychographics might be for your primary customer. Because when you know that, you can start to kind of determine, it'll help you determine your value proposition and why they might buy from you.
And I'd be just curious, before I get to the questions, maybe the audience here might want to put in the chat box a little bit. Have you ever created a value proposition for your business? And what is it? it'd be interesting to share some of that. So if we have some brave souls, please enter that information in the chat box and let me get to the questions, Paul.
Okay, great.
Okay, first one is, will we get a copy of this webinar? The answer to that is yes. I will send you a link to this probably on Sunday. Watch your email. Next question. Is there a different plan for a small business that has had to pivot and offer new items to their client base, even if in the future they will not necessarily offer those items?
I would say I wouldn't say there's a different plan. You can use this business model canvas for exactly that. Understanding, when you pivot, really, the purpose of this is to really just think deeply about the effects of the pivot, right? And then if you think of it in concert with your existing business and you fill out the business model canvas in a sufficient manner, and you already have a business model canvas or a business plan filled out for your existing business, now you get a chance to kind of look at the two and see where they meet and maybe where they diverge, and make some decisions from there in terms of how to move forward on, with the new product or what to do with the existing business.
Paul, isn't it always too, it's called the canvas, so it's kind of like if you think about an artist who's creating a painting or something, sometimes you start something and sometimes you do have to pivot, and sometimes you have to create a new business model canvas, depending on the circumstances. So,
yeah, that's a great way to think about it, is that it's changeable, right? I mean, and it's kind of like part of what was mentioned in the beginning, about using sticky notes or putting it on a computer where you can change the things, because that's how business works, right? We have to pivot as new situations occur.
In fact, sometimes existing business are guilty of doing the same thing over and over again, and maybe every so many years they ought to be able to be checking that to see if they should be changing, what they're doing. So,
right, and then the other great way to reference this, that's a wonderful way to reference it. If you've been in business for a while and you feel like you're in a rut and you did create a business plan at one point, go back and look at it and see if it maybe helps you get out of the rut. Maybe there's something in there that you lost sight of. Or if you created a business model canvas, maybe there's something you lost sight of that you stopped doing or you moved away from that might help you get out of the rut.
Next question. It says, I went the franchise route in lieu of a concrete bona fide answer without a novel product or service. So this individual, this is to answer the question about why.
So I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question, but you went the franchise route. Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, you're saying I own a franchise. Shouldn't the franchise be the one that created the value proposition or the why? Am I understanding that?
The person just typed in and says, I just mean I don't have an answer.
Oh.
That was a tricky question, Barry. Very tricky.
Well, this is a great time to think about it then, right? As you get to put together one of these, just because it's a franchise, that doesn't mean that you don't have your own personal value proposition to offer. If I have a Subway, why does somebody come to my Subway? If they're equal distance in between me and another Subway, what's going to make them come to mine versus the other one? And sometimes that's going to be pattern, right? Mm-hmm. But you can do something to make them want to come to yours instead of the other one. And that's an example of your value proposition, even if you have a franchise.
Okay, we do have somebody took me up on the offer about the value proposition. This person says, yes, unique value proposition. Her unique value proposition, and I happen to know this individual because I have mentored with her, she has a food product, and her value proposition is healthy due to no preservatives, convenient, competitively priced, high level concept, intuitive, creative, thoughtful, and honest.
Nice. I like how you put in personal attributes there, at the end. I think that's neat in order to connect with people. It connects on a personal level with people, right? And that's really kind of what you're looking for with this why and this value proposition, is connecting on a personal level, which I feel like you do in that value proposition, particularly at the end. So nice work on that.
Good. Okay, is there anybody else who is brave enough to tell us what your value proposition is? We'll wait a minute here to see if anybody else would be able to do it. And if you don't, are you have any questions about how to do a value proposition? Again, one of the more difficult parts, of the lean canvas to do. So Paul, without, I don't see any more comments about that. I did think I had some person wanted to raise their hand while we're pausing here a minute. Let me just do a double check to see if I can do that. Somebody had raised their hand before. Rory, I'm going to allow you to talk. So go ahead and speak, Rory. You need to unmute yourself in the very left-hand side of your, at the very bottom there. Rory, you are permitted to talk, but you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
I actually didn't realize I had raised my hand, but I'm happy to say the value add if that's useful. Otherwise, I didn't mean to. I don't have a question.
Oh, well, go ahead and tell us your value proposition. And I'm so sorry. I thought you were a he instead of a she. So,
no worries. Common encounter. I do a workplace sexual harassment training, and my competitors are check the box compliance. And my value proposition is that I will cover compliance while really advancing behavior change, or organizational shifts, and generating individual insight on the actual issues.
Rory, is that focused on the person at the organization who you would try to sell the service to, or is that value proposition focused on the end user, the person who takes the course?
The individual insight would be generated for all employees, including my buyer is usually an HR, usually the head of HR. The organizational shift would be directed both to the head of HR as well as the executive team, and behavior change is generally oriented towards. I do think that probably is targeting managers more than anyone, but that would be something that would be of value to the head of HR, which doesn't actually, which doesn't want to be dealing with harassment issues, and it's in their interest to mitigate risk and make these changes to prevent harassment before it happens.
Okay. All right, great. So it sounds like you've really zeroed in on the reasons why the HR managers are going to buy your service versus somebody else's. Because you had mentioned that the others are kind of check the box. But maybe if you can even hone in more on that, maybe think even further about what what you've got a pain in there, which is great, and you said at the end that they don't want they don't want employees coming to them for sexual harassment. So yeah, I mean, maybe if you can fit something a little bit more like regarding the pain in there that they're feeling and how you're going to solve the pain, that might strengthen it. It'd be interesting to kind of see if you're able to work anything else into that, and then maybe compare the two value propositions. I mean, you got a great start though. I mean, it sure sounds like you're speaking to the audience and the audience you're talking to. So nice work.
I think it'd also be helpful too to check your competitors' websites just to see if they, if a broad base of your competitors, to see if they offer anything similar to that, just to make sure that your value proposition is correct.
And if you guys check out that Simon Sinek Golden Circle video, one of the great things he talks about is the what and the how. And he explains that too many businesses try to sell people on what they do or how they do it. But the reality is that's not why people buy. That's not why they buy a brand. They buy a brand because of why the brand does what they do, what they do, and why the brand is going to be helpful to that buyer. So if you kind of think in those terms, like if you look at any of your language, and I'm just talking to everybody, not just Rory, but just look at the language that you're using right now to describe your business, and does it talk about what you do? Does it talk about how you do it? Or does it talk about why you do it and why someone's going to want your product or service? Once you get past the what and the how, that why is when you're going to hit your most powerful language for drawing people in and getting people to buy. So check out that Simon Sinek video.
Okay, Paul, we have about 5 more minutes worth of questions here. I have 3 more just popped up, and then we can let you go back to the presentation.
Okay.
The first question is regarding that answer we gave to the person, regarding the franchise.
Okay.
And this person wants to know, they said, is it possible you can elaborate about what you mentioned about differentiating your franchise store while staying within the franchise guidelines?
So to put it out there, I've never owned a franchise, okay, but I do understand that they have limits to their branding and their marketing and that sort of thing. So, obviously you got to play within those rules. However, you're the one interacting with the customer. The franchise is not interacting with them. So you're the face-to-face of your business. And that is where I feel that opportunity is. And you're the one in your community, right? So not sure what the rules are, but I can't tell you. I never see a Subway owner at any of the parades or any of the public events or anything like that in a town. Now, maybe that's because they can't do it. Maybe the rules are against that. But if the rules are not against that, why aren't they? So I guess that would be my answer, is that you're the one in the community. You're the one interacting face to face with the customers. Those are your opportunities to set yourself apart from the other franchisees down the street. I hope that helps.
And I would add to that too, that there's such a multitude of different franchise agreements out there that I think, to your point, Paul, you'd have to look at each agreement and see, where they draw the border in terms of being able to, what you can and can't do with it, because some of these are very flexible and some of them are extremely tight the way they're written. So,
right. Another thing is, are there co-op funds, right? Does your franchise allow do they give co-op funds for advertising where you can put your own TV commercial out, or put your own billboard out or something like that, and they'll pay you part of the money for it. You just, again, you have to, be wary of what your contract says. But if you have that, is that an opportunity for you to set yourself apart and to communicate your why, communicate your value proposition to the community?
Okay. Another person here talked in their stating their value proposition. I said, this is a value proposition for a floral shop. Would an example be focusing on one type of flower first, like tulips, since it's not always in season? I would find wholesalers who have tulips all year round, or could it be offering more variety of flowers than my competitors?
So by referring to a product, if we go back to that what and how and why concept, right? If you're just focusing on a product, that is really about a what. I have tulips. Now, that doesn't mean there's no value in that, because like you're saying, a lot of places don't carry them all year round. So, but that's really that'd be really more about, I guess, finding those times of years when other companies aren't offering that product, and then marketing that product to the right audience at that time. That would be a value proposition based on a product, but I wouldn't say that's an overall value proposition. I wouldn't say it's an overall why you do business. It might be it's a momentary why for why the customer would come see you at that time. But then, there should also be an overarching why so that they come back to you again when it's not, out of tulip season. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah. And here's the last question, then we'll let you move on. So this person says, Sherry says, are we to describe the product's attributes or how the client sees the benefit? For example, made in the USA, fast shipping, and great follow-up.
Yeah, so there's a difference between features and benefits and the why, right? So made in the USA, that it's not so much a feature as it is a why. It's, it drives it. You have a customer who you have a particular buyer persona who really sees value in buying things that are made in the USA, right? So that would be a why. That'd be a why driver. It'd be a value proposition for that person, more than it is a feature or a benefit. That's my take on it, at any rate. And then, Ed, can you repeat the other example?
Fast shipping and great follow-up.
So, that's more of, I would categorize that more of a feature and more of a how, you provide, it's how you provide your product. That's not a why you provide your product. You provide your product made in the USA. You do that because you are supportive of your country, right? That's why you do that. Fast shipping is more of a what or a how. That's how you deliver your product. So hopefully that kind of helps differentiate those.
I would add to that too, is don't forget what you're saying, a unique value proposition.
Right.
Are there other products made in the USA? Mm-hmm. Are there other companies that have fast shipping? Is there other companies that have great follow-up? So you might be facing, it's a feature of your company, but is that really your unique? How do you differentiate yourself from those companies that have those same attributes?
Yeah. And this is what makes the value proposition so tough.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
What makes it so tough to really keep digging and keep digging. And every time you come up with something like, ooh, maybe this is the why,
Mhm.
you have to ask yourself, well, is it a how? Is it a what? If it is, then it's probably not the why, right? And is it unique? So it takes a lot of work to really kind of dig down to your value proposition.
I work with a lot of clients in the food business, all aspects of it. And I've never met a client yet whose product hasn't tasted better than the other competition. And that's a little tough one to prove because of the fact that everybody says their product tastes better. So anyway, just to keep that in thought. So Paul, I'm going to let you go on to this, and we'll circle back to some of your other questions you folks get in, but it's a very interesting topic, and it's probably, as I said, the most difficult part of this lean canvas model to do is that unique value proposition. So it's worth focusing on that. So Paul, with that, I will let you take over again.
Okay. So this is so exciting to me because this is why it's so exciting and rewarding to be a SCORE mentor. To be able to go through these exercises with people, it's so much fun for me. Okay, so another part of this business model canvas puzzle is, putting down what your channels are. For these channels represent how you get your product or service to your customers, or how they get to your product or service. Are you working through a distributor? You're manufacturing and then you're selling to a distributor who gets it out to the market. Are you a retail location? Are you online store? Are you delivering your product to people? Do you have affiliates who are pushing your product and you're giving them links on their websites where people can click to purchase the product? Do you have a field sales team? Remember when vacuums were sold door to door? Does anybody have a field sales team anymore? So that's what this section is really all about, just detailing, thinking through how you're going to deliver your product to your customers or how they're going to access your product. Okay, so we're getting close here, but this is a highly important section, obviously, where you're going to think through the costs of your business. I always like to think through costs before I think through revenues, because I feel like when you think about it from a cost perspective, it brings up some things you might not think about when you're first thinking about revenues. So, your costs, it's pretty obvious. I mean, it's pretty obvious category there, but, does it cost you anything to work with a manufacturer or a distributor? Like if you're a reseller, like do you have a minimum buy that you have to meet before you can work with that distributor? Your labor, are you going to need people? Are you going to need admin people? Are you going to need sales people? Are you going to need marketing people or warehouse people? Materials and supplies, equipment, real estate, legal, etc. This is like a super important category for you, especially when you're starting out, because you don't want to miss expenses. And this is another reason why I encourage people to do both a business model canvas and a business plan, because in the business plan, you're going to have a lot of your financials on there with your financial projections. So in this phase of it, thinking through your costs in detail will transfer really well when you move the information over to your business plan to finish that off. And then revenues, right? This is the fun one. Like everybody loves to think about revenues. Man, where's all the money going to come in? How's this going to make me rich, right? And but really think deeply about this. Think about all the ways that you can generate revenues from your products, your services. Are you going to have any add-ons, products or services? Maybe you're going to sell through some sort of subscription model. If you're software as a service company, subscription model. But you don't just have to be a software as a service company to have a subscription model. As we've seen, a whole bunch of stuff, are being sold through subscription now. Is there going to be a secondary market? Like, do you manufacture a product and your excess leftover inventory can be sold to the dollar store? Are you selling through trade shows? Are you going to sell consulting services or training services? Are you going to be a keynote speaker even? This is a good way to really think about all of the ways that you can make revenue within the business. And then I'm kind of going off the typical trail here, but it's really hard to think about revenues, to me at any rate, without also thinking about pricing, right? Because you got to figure out, well, revenue is how much money you're bringing in. And if you haven't yet thought about pricing, you don't really have any way to then try to estimate revenues. So this is another good spot here to think about your pricing and put that in the box. Think about your payment terms, right? Payment terms are something a lot of people overlook, but it has a big effect on your cash flow. So are you going to make people pay up front? Are people paying net 15, net 30, net 60, etc.? The reason why that's important is because if you imagine the flow of money, the cash flow, right? When are you going to get money from clients? And you're thinking about your costs. Now you get to imagine how your revenues will cover your upfront costs. So that's why I encourage people to think about payment terms and cash flow in this section here. Okay, so I think I'll pause there. We did revenues, costs, and channels. So I think I'm going to pause there for any questions that anybody might have.
Okay, I do have a couple questions. I didn't get to the last time we paused for questions, Paul. Okay. First comment. Well, I'll add some questions, then I'll come to this person's comment. Person asked here, is a plan needed for property preservation type of business? Go ahead and answer that, or if you'd like me, I could unmute this individual to elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, if you could unmute them, that'd be great.
Okay. Ms. Davis, I'm going to unmute you if you'll hang on 1 second. I lost the person here who asked the question.
I guess the answer very likely is yes. Okay. Because no matter what the business is, all these things, revenues, costs, channels, etc., you have to think you have to think through those things, no matter what the business is, because every business has revenues and costs and channels and buyer personas, right? They all have these things, which is what makes this a great tool for people to use. So, without being able to ask her about further details on that, I would answer very likely yes.
Okay, I'll see if she comes back to the Zoom meeting. If so, then I'll unmute her.
Okay.
Next question is the same person who talked about. She said, "Sorry for the confusion. Since you aren't aware of my products, a facility needs to adhere to federal guidelines when used in occupied spaces. Flexible tilt truck covers pre-made and measured at the job site for construction and also environmental services." Sherry, I'm going to also unmute you so you can elaborate a little bit more on that, if that's okay with you and you're okay to speak. Sherry, I just unmuted you. Go ahead and speak, please.
Sounds great. Yeah. So when I was asking the question earlier, in this instance, when that product specifically that I had the question on, when I was trying to figure out the value proposition, generally a facility is not reaching out to me the first time unless it's a situation where they're going to probably have a federal inspection coming where they have to get it quickly. The Department of Labor requires your debris to be covered when it's going down the hallways. And if you're working in environmental services, that's one area that buys them, culinary services, as well as any construction project. So the fact that it's made here and shipped quickly, in that example, it's because of the fact that if I'm getting an order placed with me, I have to know, I have to trace it from the time it arrives, and they usually are in a time crunch. So without knowing about some of my safety products, it wouldn't have made any sense if we're kind of all generalizing. So that's why I was asking that question.
Gotcha. So this was the Made in the USA.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. And well, you kind of hit on something there where you talked about they need to know. I think you said they need to know. Maybe you said process or time frame or the cautions you take. Exactly.
And I trace the product even when I see that it's been signed at their loading dock. I mean, it's important enough that department, usually by the time they are placing an order with me, if they don't already have more at their location, or if it's a facility, for instance, usually it's oh no, I need to have that yesterday kind of a situation.
Okay, so really what they're looking for is they're looking for visibility.
Okay.
You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just hearing this for the first time, but what's kind of hitting me about this is visibility, responsibility, safety, and then knowing that the government guidelines are being followed. Correct. Am I hitting any of that? Right?
Yes. Usually the first few times where someone is searching for that specific product, it's because they know they have federal inspection on the way, and they will be cited. They will be fined.
Okay, so that's a fear right there. That's a pain point, right?
Yes,
that you get to touch on.
Exactly.
So that seems more of a why to me.
Okay.
Right there is that pain point of I'm struggling to figure out how to say it, but
time sensitive shipping.
Well, of not getting government fines, right? Of not not being outside of government protocol, I guess.
Okay.
And that the things you put in place are going to prevent them from being cited.
Okay.
Right? Because that's expensive to them, right?
Absolutely.
And that can hurt their business, maybe even shut down their business. So that seems more like the why to me. And think it through, right? Because I'm just spitballing.
Sure.
But that seems like much more of a why to me than Made in the USA. Or, we cover it, we cover it when it goes down the hall, right? Kind of thing.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, that's the real pain point for them, is they got to avoid being fined, but then they also need it fast.
Yes.
Does that help at all?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
And I would just add this as a SCORE commercial to all of you on this webinar this afternoon. This is exactly what SCORE mentors do. If you need one-on-one help creating your lean canvas or creating a value proposition, we'll work with you and brainstorm with you, just as Paul did there with Sherry, to basically try to help you get that created. So if you need that help, either putting together one of these plans or a specific part of this plan, use our resources, tap into us and say, I need help, I need assistance. our people are trained or be more than happy to help you with that. So that would be one of my comments. So
Yeah, that was exciting, Sherry. Thank you.
Yeah, very
I hope
good.
it helped.
You're welcome. Let me know when the next role play starts.
Okay, let's see what else we have here for questions. Okay, Barry, you're back again. Generally, if you've given leeway on pricing, you can raise prices for your services used most often and lower them for lesser used ones. It's just a comment Barry had made. Okay, great. Anybody else have questions about pricing or revenues or any of these boxes that Paul has gone over with you? Okay. Here we go. Suddenly it came up. I have two big projects. I need help putting together cash flow projections. Katie, we can help you with that. Put a request in. We have got cash flow models, and we actually do webinars and roundtables on those from time to time. But if you need one-on-one help, if you don't have a SCORE mentor, ask for one, and we'll be more than happy to be able to help you put together, cash flow projections. And those are so darn important, not so much on a lean canvas business model, but on a business plan. You better have your cash flow, because that's what the bankers look for. So, okay, I don't see any other questions here. Paul, you want to continue?
Sure. And we're almost done. So, you are going to think about the ways you're going to make revenue. You're going to think about your costs. But you also want to figure out what are the key metrics, what are the guideposts that you have to hit. And it's not just financial. It could be other guideposts as well, as you'll see here in this example. But what are the guideposts that you need to hit to know that you are on track to achieve your financial projections, or make it to a certain revenue number, or break even, or get to the point where you can pay yourself, or get to the point where you can hire an employee. That's what these key metrics are for, thinking through what those are for your specific business. I mean, you can see this list, it's all over the place because there's so many different businesses out there, right? Some of them, it might be sales. Some of them, it might be break even. Some might be churn, like in the case of software as a service or subscription. If it's real estate, it might be internal rate of return. If it's retail, maybe, one of your key metrics is your abandoned cart ratio. And you'll come up with a ton of key metrics for your own industry. But as you're thinking through your business, and then as you're developing your financial projections, just think about those guideposts along the way. Think about what you want to achieve, when you need to get to break even, when you need to get to revenue where you could quit your job, or get to a point where you can hire your first person to help. Any of those guideposts along the way, make sure that you're plugging those in here so you understand where the business needs to go, how your revenues are going to get you there. And then you can even have cost metrics as well, not spending, having budgets and other cost metrics, loss or, labor, that kind of thing, in order to help you understand where your business is now and how close you are to getting to that next stage that you have determined for the business. Okay. And then the last box, the last piece of the puzzle here is, not a lot of people have this, but if you do, awesome. it's the unfair advantage. If you have any patents or trademarks, if you're the first to market for a new product, if you have some kind of like huge purchase order from one of the major players, those would be things that would be considered an unfair advantage against your competitors. And again, there's not a lot of companies. I would probably say most companies don't have unfair advantages. Most startups don't, but there's obviously a segment of them that do, particularly if you have IP, intellectual property. Okay, so that's it. That makes up your business model canvas.
A question for you is,
yes, sir.
If I were doing this lean canvas business model, is there a particular box to start on or a sequence in which to fill this plan out? Or could you start anywhere, or what would you recommend?
So most people start with either customer segments or the problem. And, like I mentioned in the beginning, I kind of went through this in the order that I find that seems logical to me. So my order is problem, customer segment, solution, value proposition, channels, costs, revenues, key metrics, unfair advantage, right? That's what makes logical sense to me, because I think each one leads to the next. But, you can really start anywhere. I mean, as long as you take time enough to focus on each of the segments, that, it will bring up ideas for the other sections. So if you started key metrics, I don't know why you'd start at key metrics, but because if you started key metrics, like that's gonna bring up something that's gonna make you think about an aspect of revenues or an aspect of costs or value proposition. But at any rate, my suggestion would be problem, customer segments, solution, value prop, etc.
We're open for questions right now. So let me go back. I think there was a few more kind of slid in there while we were talking. It says, I have used the SCORE template. My numbers are now outdated. I need to do a better job. Katie, please put in a request to SCORE for another mentor. And we'll get you a mentor and we'll give you a model and we can help you update that. And it says, is there a SCORE mentor who knows how to negotiate with city governments on TIF, opportunity zone, historic tax credits? We can advise negotiating strategies, but we can't negotiate for you. But we do have some people who are familiar with that subject matter that could be of help to you. So again, when you write your request to us at SCORE Fox Valley, put in need help with the cash flow model and need help with negotiating TIF zones and